Paranormal Dimensions is a regular feature on Mondays on the Paranormal UK radio network. Any opinions or comments made by any guest are their own, and they do not necessarily reflect any of the presenters or network's opinions.
Whatever you believe about UFOs, whether you're a skeptic, a believer, or somewhere in between, there's no getting away from the fact that the phenomenon, whatever its true nature, raises important defence, national security, and air safety issues.
Hello, this is Nick Pope, and you're listening to the Paranormal UK Radio Network, the UK's biggest paranormal network. And this is Paranormal Dimensions with David Young.
For me, this is the kind of show that I like doing most, where you basically just have a freewheeling discussion, have a chance to go off on topics. That's what's going to make you an outstanding player in the field. Just keep doing it.
Hello and welcome to today's show. Thank you for that introduction, Nick, and thank you for those very kind words, Peter Robbins. Now, you may or may not be aware, today's show is a repeat of a show from last October, and it features Mr. Paul Sinclair. If you've listened to a few shows over the past few months, you would have heard Paul's name come up a few times. The reason I've got Paul's show on again is because unfortunately there's been a bit of a technical hitch, and the guest that I was supposed to have on this week unfortunately couldn't be available, so I thought it a fine excuse to have Paul's show back on again. And this was his second appearance on the show. He had been on the show about a year before this particular show, and hopefully we're getting towards the time where we can get Paul back on again. Now, during this show, you'll hear Paul and I talking about the Outer Limits Conference, which was due to be held last year. Unfortunately, it had to be cancelled, and then it had to be cancelled again. Now, the new date is the 7th and 8th of May 2022, when Paul will be appearing alongside Peter Robbins, Malcolm Robinson, Jennifer Stein, Philip Kinsella, Ronald Kinsella, Paul Escoff, Mike Coville, Sasha Christie, Steve Midgley, Colin Saunders and Chris Evers, who's actually running the conference. Now, that will be in Hull, and tickets are available from the Outer Limits magazine. Or if anyone wants tickets and they can't find where to get them, please just get in touch with me and I'll put them in the right direction. Now, also during this show, you'll hear us mention a few names such as Colonel Holt, Andrew Collins and Bill Rook, all of which have been on the show since this show. So if you want to backtrack and see if you can find those, if you're interested, then I'm sure you can find them still. Now, as always, if ever you'd like to get in touch with me, my email address is davidyoung2qn@yahoo.co.uk. That's davidyoung, 2qn, all one word, @yahoo.co.uk. Now back to Paul Sinclair. Now, his latest book is called Night People. It's been out for quite a few months now. Now, on the back cover, there's a few recommendations from some very well-known people. One's from Whitley Strieber. England's green and pleasant land can be a very strange place, as Paul Sinclair's new book demonstrates. Nick Pope says, Paul shines a light not just on an anomalous phenomena, but on the human aspects of all this. And radio host Howard Hughes says, this book took courage and perseverance to compile, and everyone will know the next name of Robbie Williams. I love how Paul writes, which, to be honest with you, is at times terrifying. And last, but of course not least, is Philip Mantle. Paul Sinclair is just honest and direct, irrespective of the subject, which is another very true statement. Okay, for now, I think that's enough from me. Let's get on and listen to Paul's show. Hello, Paul, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, David. It's been a while since we last spoke, and it'd be good to get a few bits of information out there and just see where it leads tonight.
It is. I think it was, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was about July 2019 If my memory serves me right, the last time you were on.
Yeah, I'll take your word for that, David. And
I think it was probably when your third book, Truth Proof 3, was it out?
Yeah, that will have been it. Yeah, and,
around about it.
After that, I sort of tapered down on podcasts and radio shows for a bit. I think I sort of saturated myself with them a little bit. But
yeah, you did tell me that. You said you were burning yourself out a little bit, and I think you had a lot on your plate.
Well, I think the thing is, David, you know, I do realise that you get people on your radio show and other people get them on the shows and they'll talk about a case. And they use that as it's some kind of platform in which to, and that's all they'll talk about. And I'm not knocking those people. No. It must sound negative, but I like to give people different information if I can, you know, and I like to think it's well researched, deeper information. Yeah. You know, I could talk about Wilsthorpe and probably talk about Wilsthorpe for years because it's incredible.
We can do that in a bit, if you like.
Well, Hummonby, you know, that's another incredible case that's ongoing, and I think Wilsthorpe is to a degree, but at the moment, as a researcher, and I suppose I'd say that loosely because I think we're all researchers to some degree.
Yeah, but I think with someone like you really sort of, I don't know, you go a lot deeper into it than what a lot of people do, and the books you write are fantastic. So a lot of people don't get around to writing books, do they? You know.
Well, they don't, and that's difficult. We've been doing these podcasts, these live streams with Les Drake, Digital Creations, and Leslie, and which I've enjoyed, but you're burning candle at three ends. You're doing research, you're writing books, and then you're trying to fit the live streams in, which and sometimes, you know, getting ready to do a live stream and talk about, for an hour and a half to 2 hours about unexplained phenomena and give the listeners something that they've maybe not heard or another slant on it because you have a little bit more information.
Yeah.
It takes time, and that time takes away from other things that you're trying to do. I guess what I'm saying is you can't split yourself every direction, so someone has to give. So we're not cutting out the live streams, but we've just cut them back a little bit.
Sure,
you know?
Yeah, I understand. I mean, like myself, I mean, you say we're all researchers, but I mean, a lot of researchers, such as myself, we're researching by reading other people's books. You yourself, you write your books, and you've done all, you actually got experiences as well out there, so that's where we differ a little bit.
Yeah, well, David, you know, I don't want one of these people who doesn't give the information out, but as regards to what we're working on at the moment, what we've titled the Dark Forest Project, that's just a working title. Some info, I'm not, it's not a spoiler, I'm not talking about it much tonight, but some of the stuff I've found out,
really? It's
incredible, and that's the reason, you know, I'll come on another time and we'll do it when we've got the film together, because, I mean, I've no grand designs on it going to be some kind of blockbuster movie. It's a documentary, but it's going to be different, and we've got a lot of first-class witnesses who have no connection to each other. This is something I do say quite often, singing from same hymn sheet and reporting and documenting things from similar locations. And you've got to sort of give them credit, and not only that, you've got to think to yourself, these things they're saying sound incredible and sound unbelievable, but you know, I'm attaching some truth to what they're saying. I've got faith in these witnesses, and I think when people actually get to watch Dark Forest Project, they're going to be blown away by it. I'm really, I'm thrilled by it. It's incredible.
Well, I'll tell you what, I've just scribbled on my bit of paper. So you're invited back for the third show, round about summer next year. That should do it, should it?
We hope so. We've not put any dates on it. I mean, I'm weather and COVID permitting.
Oh yeah.
I'll be driving to interview two chaps on Wednesday night, up into North Yorkshire, and at the location, because that's what we're wanting to do. I mean, we could go into any forest, and the viewer would not have a clue whether we were in location these fellas had seen this thing at, or whether we were somewhere else. But we're trying to do it right by people who are giving us information. We're sleeping in forest. You know, we're spending actual nights in the locations where these... This
is another thing I appreciate about you, Paul. You actually go out there and camp out and stuff. And a lot of people can't do that. I mean, I spent sort of hours walking around Rendlesham Forest, but I come home for the night. I don't sleep out in the forest. So that's where you go the extra mile, don't you?
Yeah, well, I don't know whether it's bravery. I think it might be stupidity bearing in mind in what they've seen. But and we've on budget that we've got, you know, we're sort of, you know, because we are doing it and we're funding it, and I think we're doing quite well with it. You know, it sounds like a boast, I realise, but proof will be in pudding. I'm really sort of excited, shall I say, about this.
Well, around about middle of next year, I'll be in touch. Well, I'll probably see you before then anyway, or at least we'll speak anyway. But I'll have a chat with you and we'll see how far you are, and if you want to come back on around about June or July next year, then please do. I'd love to have you back on. Yeah, and tell us all about it.
Yeah, honestly, it's going to be good.
Excellent.
Well, there you go. So, right, just fire away, David.
Right, okay, well, as you know, I had Andy Ramsden on last week, a good friend of yours. For the show. We had a little chat about you and the books and stuff, but we went into a few of Andy's experiences. We had some funny noises coming up on. I don't know if you listened to the show, but
I haven't. But I actually have it down to listen to.
Yeah, I mean, we were getting quite a few little funny noises and things, and he was telling me he affects electrical things somehow. When I've had this before with other people as well, you know, we get funny noises coming on the microphone and over the, and we think, well, where's that come from? You know, and it seemed to be when he was actually talking about him interfering with things. So I don't know if have you experienced that with him?
Things like that have happened with Andy, yeah. And I mean, jumping from Andy, as you know Bob Brown, don't you?
Yeah. I was going to talk to you about Bob, as well.
Beacon of Light Radio. Well, Bob had Andrew Collins on, probably 6 weeks ago, and he asked me to come upstairs and sit during the interview, and a voice came through during that show, which we didn't hear. Producer at show heard it, and I think she saw it go up as well in the sort of wave. And when we listened back to it, Andrew was describing some things and talking about times that he'd spent with me up at Bempton, and a voice in the room with me and Bob said, "What did it? Explain it." That's what it said. And it's not explain it, and you think, oh, that could be explain it. It's clear.
Wow.
It got Andrew so excited that he wanted to do another show, and we did another one about 2 weeks ago. I don't think anything come through on that one. I mean, I got somebody in music industry, a good friend of mine, to have a listen to it, and he sort of worked out that it was 3 times louder than audio from myself and Bob, and from Andrew's end, so we don't know. There's some strange things happen, isn't there? You know.
Yeah, I mean, Skype is supposed to be just like person to person, isn't it? You shouldn't be anyone else on the line with you.
Well, not really, no.
Strange. Unless we are being watched by men in black. I do wonder sometimes.
It's a strange world, isn't it? But as you know, I think when you're wanting something to happen, it rarely happens. I mean, myself and Bob, we spend, I've said this before as well, an unhealthy amount of time around those cliff tops and up on the walls, and it's not happening. It doesn't happen. But having said that, last night I went up there and I was with Bob, Chris Wright, and Steve Jackson, 2 lads from Scarborough. Always, first time in probably 6 months, and we all sort of witnessed, and there could be just natural phenomena, but underneath the baseline of the clouds, the long strip of cloud that you'd sort of observe, huge flashes of light, 4 huge flashes of light. Really? We didn't hear no thunder or lightning, but it could be something to do with atmospherics. Not everything's got to be... No, it is unexplained, but it's not got to be unexplained in the woo, has it? You know, it's probably a perfectly natural explanation. Because it's been a bit flat up there for about 6 months, but... you just sort of get ready for it. I suppose it's same. I know you'll go to Rendlesham quite a bit, David.
Not as much recently. Well, I was going to go this week actually, but it's been cancelled because my friend his car's up the creek, so he can't go. So I won't be going on my own. I'm moving soon as well, anyway. So.
All right. Well, my point being, though, I mean, I bet you thought people who do visit on a regular basis, although you can get these incredible experiences, it'll not be every time you go into that spot.
No, that's right.
You only need one, and it sort of feeds it then for months again. It's sort of. bit of a habit.
I mean, my experiences at Rendlesham has been mostly really seeing orbs when you take pictures, not seeing them at the time, but actually when you when you actually look at your pictures you've taken, or you see mists and on the photos which you can't see with your eyes. Yeah,
do you know, David, the orbs? I'm no expert with photography, listeners, either, by the way, so, people far more better qualified than me. But the orbs don't interest me as much as the mist. I mean, I always think of the orbs, and, well, it could be dust particles or pollen.
There is that.
I'm saying it is in all instances, but the mist, we've took pictures of this mist. I know what you're talking about, and that is interesting because you could take 20 or 30 pictures, and then all of a sudden you'll get 2 or 3, and...
That's exactly right, yeah. It's the same with the orbs, actually, Paul. I mean, normally if I'm taking pictures in the dark, I usually take about 7 or 8 pictures. Most of them all come out just black, and then all of a sudden you get a couple that's got all these orbs and shapes and different coloured orbs. Now, you'd think that every picture would come out the same, wouldn't you? If it was dust.
It would.
Yeah.
As I say, I don't know. I mean,
no, I don't know really.
I'm not qualified enough to talk about orbs. Well, are any of us qualified enough to talk about unexplained phenomena? No. We're researching it, but nobody's got answers. I know you've probably spoke to loads of people on your shows who set themselves up as experts, but.
Well, some people I've spoken to are actually like mediums or psychic or whatever, they do actually see things in these orbs. Whether they're pulling my leg or not, I don't know. There are people that I do trust, and they do say they see things in them, so, I mean, who knows. But like you say, these mist shapes, what you get, which you can't see with your eyes, and it's nobody smoking or it's not mist or anything, you do get facial shapes and things in them, or and it's really weird.
I went to Staxton, Wold and Flixton, probably 6 or 7 years ago with Steve Ashbridge. And we were up there in the night, and anybody who sort of read Truth Proof books will know that I've written about the Flixton werewolf and the accounts of it, and we weren't up looking for a werewolf, but we were just absorbing atmosphere and area, like we said before, chances of seeing any of this phenomena are far and few between. But what my point is, we took a few pictures and nothing, and then suddenly we'd got this sparkling mist in the pictures, which were really unusual. I mean, Steve doesn't smoke, I don't. It weren't that cold that there were vapour on your breath, like the steam when you're breathing on a really sharp cold night. So
the thing is, it's not when you get mist like that, it's thin anyway, isn't it? When you see these misty shapes, they're really thickly built, aren't they? They're like clouds, aren't they?
Oh, they're quite incredible. I've still got those pictures, and I've had them at Danesdyke in the past. We got them at Flixton, and we've had them at Bempton a few times. If I'm being truthful, I don't take that many pictures when I'm at Bempton. I'm usually up there with a camcorder, and I'll take a thermal camera up with me as well now. But we're just there to hopefully. I think everyone interested in the subject, whether you're really heavily involved in it or you just do an occasional sky watch, I think everybody's open to that holy grail, that sort of thing, that even if you can't prove it because you haven't got that, I don't know, you've not come back with a piece of metal, or you've not come back with a photograph that's irrefutable, if that's the word.
And obviously that's what everyone's searching for all the time, and obviously that would be. Well, that would be absolute proof that we will be looking for,
It would, but don't you think, David, that if I managed to film something over the sea, somebody would say I faked it.
Oh yeah, you get that. You're always going to get that, Paul. I mean, I think that comes with the territory, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean...
unless you know you. I mean, I know you, and I know you wouldn't do stuff like that. But obviously, someone that doesn't know you so well may think that, or may assume that.
Without a doubt. Years ago, we used to go up onto the Wolds, and with budget that I'd got available at the time, I was using a Sony VX 2100, and I think it were about £2,500. You bear in mind you can pay thousands and thousands, but that were about as much as I could afford. Really good camera in low light, and we were doing as much as we could with light that were available, a really dark night, filming these strange objects over some trees, not too far away. I think I was with Steve Ashbridge that night, but when I put it onto YouTube, people were telling me that I was filming things through glass, and you've got other people saying, it's dark, it's rubbish, and they're right in a way, but if they'd have realised where you were and tools you'd got to work with, we were doing quite well. Do you know? It's a thankless job, really, for bulk at time, because you're never going to please everybody, and you know you're always going to get people saying fake or that guy's telling complete pack of lies, and you've got to have faith in who you're talking to as well. You know, you know.
Absolutely.
Because once you place your faith in somebody and put your head above parapet and say, I think this guy's telling truth, I wouldn't say you've got to hope. You've got to hope your judgment's right.
Yeah. And also, the way I see it, why go out there all hours of the night, spending hours up there, and then just to fake something? I don't see the point in that.
No, well, I can't remember the date. Bob would tell you the date. I've got it written down somewhere, but we went up there last year with Chris Turner came, a guy called Lee Hayward, two other guys from Scarborough, Steve Jackson and Chris, who I've just mentioned, and Jerry Denning, who's a lighting engineer and quite a bit of an expert. He could measure these lights in kelvins that were appearing over the sea, and that was the first time that Chris had ever seen anything unexplained, and he were blown away by it. And luckily with Jerry and the sound and lighting engineer, when he were measuring these lights and that, we could rule out flares just with his expertise. I knew they weren't flares anyway, because, you know, nothing just switches on and then switches off and appears in a different part of the sky. They don't operate like flares, but they got to see them. And that's something that I've noted with the phenomena, particularly in that area. Not every time, but if you take somebody up who's never been before, it's almost like it puts a little show on for you.
Yeah.
It sounds crazy, it really does, but that appears to be what's at work. I mean, I don't know whether things like that happen at Rendlesham, or, you know, somebody new turns up, and it might be the excited atmosphere. I don't know what caused that effect. But it's interesting. It is interesting, because we have noted that you take somebody up, and I won't say 100% guaranteed it, but a lot of times something else will happen. It's interesting.
I think a lot of it might depend also on how sensitive they are. I mean, I don't see myself as very sensitive, you know, like medium-wise and psychic-wise. I think some people, because they are more, I know when I took Gary Bradfield up there, when we went up there for a walk with Brenda, actually, and he sensed something, and he said about there was something behind us, and he's quite sensitive. So, but I mean, obviously I couldn't sense it, but you just have to take his word for it as to what he's seeing or what he's sensing, you know. So
yeah,
but
it's difficult. Isn't it?
It's people you trust, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, and are they actually telling you the truth, sort of thing, you know? And I think a lot of time you look at a person and you sort of gauge the body language, and not only that, you think to yourself, what's he actually got to gain, or she got to gain by telling you the story? You know, oh yes, you can use my name, I don't mind, but you're only going to get ridicule from it, from people outside of the paranormal field, should we say.
Yeah. I mean, there's another friend of mine, his name's Alex Lovelock. He calls himself the Maverick Medium. He's going to do a show with me just before Christmas, around about December time. Not quite sure what the date is at the moment. But you want to have a listen to that, because he's actually very psychic, and he takes some amazing pictures. Like, you know, he's taking you talked about your photos just now.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's got some amazing photos he's taken. And
well, you know, is it Bill from York?
Bill Rook.
Bill Rook. He's taking some interesting pictures, should we say? I mean, I don't mean all of his pictures are incredible, and that's no disrespect to Bill, but some of them I've looked at and I've scratched my head and think, I don't know what's going off here. They are interesting, some of them pictures. So yeah, very good.
Yeah, I mean, we're still waiting for his book to appear, aren't we?
Yeah, I don't know. He's probably been busy, I don't know, but he is doing the book, isn't he? He said he is.
It's about 2 years coming now, I think. It's because I did say to him, when your book's coming out, Bill, let me know, and you'll come on the show and tell us all about it. So we're still waiting. But anyway,
you might get there. You never know with this lockdown, it might spur him on to
Yeah. Now, I think he was going through, he's talking about he's spending a lot of money because of all the colour, he wants it all in colour and all these colour pictures, and he was going to do it in hardback and all that, and I said, it's going to cost you a fortune, Bill, you know, you want to do like a softback type, you know.
Yeah,
well, you'll know that yourself.
only Bill will know that, I suppose. At the end of the day, we'll see when it comes out, won't we?
Yeah. Anyway, talking about books, your Truth Proof books, you've done 3 of them now. As I say, the last time you were on the show, I think number 3 had just come out. But they've all done pretty well, haven't they? And
well, I think apart from number 2, number 1 and number 3 got to number 1. I know it's Amazon; it's not sort of, but they still got to number 1 on Amazon.
Well, that's still good going, Paul, isn't it?
Yeah, and they're all us there. They're all us there or thereabouts. They're all us hovering around. You know when you start selling. Sometimes I don't know. You might not sell a few books for a few days, and then all of a sudden you've got a flurry of books, and it always amazes me how that happens. And you think to yourself, because I haven't done a radio show, I don't like that, but they've done okay. And I think it's just the fact that people get to read, when they read Truth Proof books, a lot of accounts that's never been heard before, because I'm into plagiarising other people's work. I worked on XS894, the lightning that crashed, that Tony Dodd wrote about in his book Alien Investigator, but I only worked on that one because I'd got new information. Right. I would never have just sort of looked at Tony's work and adapted it to my own. Everything. If you read the 2 accounts, if you read Tony's and then you read mine, they're alien to each other.
Yeah.
In fairness to Tony, I mean, bless him, I contacted him, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago when I started looking into that case. If anybody's not familiar with it, it's a lightning that crashed into the North Sea on September the 8th, 1970, allegedly pursuing a UFO. And a guy called Pat Otter brought it to fruition, and then Tony wrote Alien Investigator, but I found lots and lots of other information that they'd never found out, and I contacted Tony and asked him if he wanted to do a bit of work with me on it, and he said he'd love to assist. And I don't mean assist as in Tony's inferior, because he was a great researcher, but he didn't want to get him over-involved because he'd previously had death threats about this case.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah, that's his exact words. So it's an interesting one, and it's one I've still got faith in, that I've even more information to come on that. And I mean, we're going back a long time, aren't we? 1970. But
why would he get death threats, Paul?
I don't know. I think he were unearthing things that didn't want to see light of day. I didn't ask him. That's what he told me.
Because that makes it sound like it was a suspicious crash in the first place, then, doesn't it?
Well, there were a lot of bad feeling about it, because he's associating it with UFOs and things, and not everybody. I remember family members and things would maybe think it's sort of, I don't know, it's not nice to be associated with UFOs, and but you've got to be as respectful as you can to these people. At the end of the day, we're researching something and writing about something that we know people are going to be interested in, but we've got to think that there's a genuine person behind that story who's lost his life. Yeah. So it's got to be treated with as sensibly and as delicately as possible. Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
And if you have no proof that it's connected to UFOs, you can't say irrefutably that it is. No. But on the other side, I mean, just to dwell on that for a moment, what they never found out was, obviously, he crashed, allegedly pursuing the UFO, but days before, an RAF Marine launch based in Bridlington, I think there were 3, was hit by an unknown submerged obstacle that tore a 25-foot by 12-inch hole in its side, and it had to be beached on North Beach. And that don't mean it's UFOs, David, I realise that. But I might have got this wrong road round. You'd have to read Truth Proof, because it's ages since I wrote it. But just after the crash, a speedboat that weren't going fast, according to the wife who was watching them from the shore, hit an unknown submerged obstacle and disintegrated just out at Bay of Bridlington. And all I think there were 5 people on the boat, were all clinging to the wreckage, and they were pulled out of water by a pleasure.
Cold water up there as well.
Oh, good God, yeah. I mean, they were in a bad way. And I did actually contact, who was a little boy at the time, one of the people, because they don't know what they'd hit, or what hit them, should we say. And I managed to trace him sort of 40 years on, but he just didn't want to talk. I think it must have been a bit of a bolt out at blue when I started asking the kind of questions. But then, around the time that the alleged UFO incident took place, I'd been told by the former lighthouse keeper at Flamborough, and I'd also been told by the former butcher, the butcher shop at Flamborough, because as a young boy he went up to look at landing traces where a spaceship, as they said, landed on cliff tops. Which is, it's interesting because the lighthouse keeper told me the same story, and I've still got to talk to one of the farmers. That's why I know that the story isn't dead yet, because apparently a few days later the MOD came, men in suits came, I was told, and ordered the farmer to plough all traces of it out.
Really?
And don't forget it's September time, that, you know, no crops in fields. So there's still a little bit more to be found with that story. I know there is. And that's what I'm like. I mean, you know, it's same with Wilsthorpe. I know that there's another witness to Wilsthorpe because a 999 call went in saying that from a lady who was observing what she described as a large black yacht sail in the sky over the sea. So basically a triangle. And she said there was orange lights coming from right and left towards it. And now I can't get to that information, but I'm hoping that witness comes to me. The reason why I can't get to the information is it's in protected archive now. Yeah. So, you know, sometimes you just have to sit on things maybe for years until something else comes forward. You know, somebody just pop out when you least expect it. You get these little gems of information.
Yeah, it's those orange lights again. That's like the one I saw in 1967. The orange thing going across the sky, but that orange comes up a lot, doesn't it?
Well, what would they have said in 1967, David? Would they have said it were a Chinese lantern? Because I don't think
they weren't around. I mean, and I know
that's what I'm saying.
I know it wasn't because it was too big in the sky and it was an oval object anyway. You know.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm meaning. That's what I said. I spoke to Whitley Strieber last week, and we were talking about this and the explanations given. And in the 1960s, I saw a huge sphere of light near Mixborough Power Station as a little boy. My dad woke me up to see this thing, and we watched it travel across rooftops of Mexborough. That's how I perceived it. It weren't on the rooftops. But my dad said he thought it were a weather balloon, because that was the staple explanation in the 60s for these. But why aren't we using weather balloon as a theory now, or an explanation?
Yeah, that's true. Well, I know what I saw wasn't a weather balloon, because it was just like pulsating across the sky, you know, and it wasn't even a bright light. It was like a incandescent light, you know, with all different colour oranges. It's very difficult to explain it, but it was completely silent as well. So it wasn't an aircraft.
You see, in many instances, David, you know, explanations given by people who are sat in their armchairs or sat behind a keyboard, not actually the people who was there and know what they've seen. The explanations that they give are even more ridiculous than what the witness is describing.
Yeah.
You know, I love it when people sit there sort of postulating what they've seen, I know what this person's seen.
Yeah.
It's a terrible insult to witness. So, you know, I mean, obviously you do get people, I don't know, looking up into the sky and they'll see a white light travelling across the sky and they think they've seen a UFO, and it's a satellite. But, you know, there's true unknowns that are seen, and then you've got an expert or a self-proclaimed expert who's going to he's going to tell you what they've seen. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, most of the time, like you say, you know it for a fact that when you do see something, you don't know what you're seeing. You can only describe what you've seen, can't you?
That's true, and then you've got the people who'll say, well, why didn't you get a photograph? Everybody's got a mobile phone.
Yeah, well, not back then in 67, I didn't.
Well, no, but what I'm saying, by today's standards, David, usually your jaw's dropped at 4 and you're trying to... You're actually, so there's 1,000 things going through your mind, and you're trying to decipher what it is.
And also, I mean, they're usually gone too quick. Well, I mean, by the time you try and get your phone out and then find the camera on it and everything else, I mean, it'd be gone anyway, most of the time.
I would agree, yeah.
Like you said, you had Andrew Collins up there with you doing a couple of bits, didn't you, a little while back? Which was correct, very interesting. Luckily, I met Andrew in Southend last year sometime, obviously before all this COVID lockdown stuff going on.
Yeah.
And I was having a long chat with him. I'm hoping I can get him on this show at one point.
Yeah, well, all his equipment, his electronic recording equipment, failed on him whilst at Bempton, and so if you hear him talking about that, it is true, because I was there. Yeah. batteries drained, which is, I mean, a lady came up onto cliff tops with us, me and Bob, a few weeks ago, Amanda. She had a brand new, well, not brand new, less than a year old sort of night vision camera, all charged up, quite a good one. It weren't a cheap model. And she were all charged and ready to go, but it were flat when she got there. It wouldn't work. I mean, Steve Ashbridge has done the same with thermal cameras. I've done it. I don't know what drains the batteries.
Yeah, you do hear that a lot, don't you?
Yeah, but it does happen up there. And I've been going up onto the cliffs with a guy called Peter Masters, who's a bit of an electronics engineer. Well, not a bit of, he is, and he's got some quite expensive gear that is set up, and we take a laptop up, and we've found a narrow band of high power. It's once again, I'm not qualified electrically to say, he's no idea what it is, and he's rigged this piece of equipment up where we can point this antenna sort of left, right, up, down, and the energy that with the band of power which is constant, and you can see it on the laptop as it's coming through, is just there constantly. And we're on edge of cliffs. There shouldn't be nothing there. So they're looking into that. I've got a friend who's a radar operator who's had a look at the sort of information that we've found. He's really keen to look into it more, and I know Peter's now got some omnidirectional equipment that's even more sensitive, so we shall be up there in the next few weeks doing that. Now, that's not forced to be paranormal in nature. It's unexplained where this huge sort of narrow band of power is coming from, but I mean, we may get to the bottom of it, or we may just have found an anomaly that we can't explain.
Sure.
Which is just about par for the course with this, what we're all interested in, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, when you've been up at the top of the cliff, you said before about seeing lights under the sea as well, haven't you?
That's correct. And me and Bob Brown have seen three lights. Obviously, three of anything, listeners, is going to form a triangle. But it just looked like a perfect triangle. But I don't think it would have been one object, because if it was huge. Because, as I've said before, when you look from them cliff tops at that elevation, David, you've got anywhere from between, depending on what height you're at, between 18 miles and 22 miles to horizon. Well, what we saw, and I think it might have been July 28th, 2017, and I ain't got paperwork in front of me here, people. It's in my head. And Bob wanted to walk up now round RAF base, and as we're walking down, I could see these lights under the sea, probably 2 or 3 miles out, and Bob couldn't see them at that point, and he's in his 70s, you'll not mind me telling you, and so he's not as quick on his feet. I says, right, I'm going to get further down the cliff so that I'm looking straight out to him. I'm as close as I can be. And I did that, and 10 minutes later Bob arrived, so we're a little bit closer, and then he could see them. We got photographs of them. Bob got photographs on his phone, which actually turned out better than ones on my Canon camera. But quite an interesting night. And that night, the same night, before we saw the lights, a guy phoned me up. I'm on top of cliffs there, and is that Paul and all this sort of thing. And he'd been looking for a bit of information, and his reasoning was his daughter were travelling home from a place called Sledmere, which will have been about 6 miles inland, 7 miles, and she'd seen a UFO, a black tube with a red line running through it. And that's the same night that we saw the lights under the sea. So it's kind of weird that there's all that sort of stuff going off. And that was the same week that the military vehicles were up and around the cliff tops. The ones with the
maybe you're saying about all that, yeah.
So, I mean, who's to say they weren't monitoring or testing something man-made? I mean, that's a possibility.
Yeah.
But highly interesting, and at the same time, I was finding, should I say, all the animal mutilations. Now, they really did puzzle me, because it weren't just land-based animals, it was the marine mammals as well, the porpoise and the dolphins that were being found with the huge holes through the jaw. Nothing
weird,
else.
Isn't it? Yeah.
It is, yeah, and found in close proximity to where the livestock were being found, on the fields, sort of quite close to it. and the livestock weren't being preyed on for meat, David. The livestock were having their ears removed, their eyes removed, and the faces stripped of skin. I'm sorry that sounds macabre, but that's a lot of Truth Proof 3 were devoted to that research in 2017. So as you can see, a lot of it's current, and then just to stay with that, and that's not to put people off coming to the area, but I think I get contacted, there's people coming up, I would say, every week and every weekend, and I think because they've read the books, they imagine stuff's happening there all the time.
Yeah. It's a bit like Rendlesham, isn't it? You get your people to come there expecting to see UFOs.
Yeah, and what you've got with the books is a collection of accounts that are going back, some of them to 1800s, you know, and especially the cryptid accounts, which is incidentally something I never thought I'd get interested in, never thought I'd even take seriously. Well, the UFO stuff that I were interested in.
Probably blame Chris Turner for that.
Well, no, I mean, Chris found me because of my interest in the cryptids.
Oh, really? I thought it was the other way around. Okay.
No. I mean, Chris did his own thing. Do you know what I mean? And then I think he were making it elusive, and he'd heard me talking about the Flixton werewolf and other things, because I'd not met him at this time, and he got in touch and asked me if I'd like to sort of contribute to that documentary that he did, and I did do, you know. But so I mean, Chris has been there up to Bempton with me 3 or 4 times, and gathered information, and I think he's enjoyed his stay there. He's a nice guy, you know.
While we're on that, we can mention that you've got a DVD for that, the Bempton Phenomenon. If anyone's interested in that, it's available, isn't it?
Well, the Bempton Phenomenon's on YouTube. They could watch that on YouTube, but we have a DVD that we need to get some more copies sorted. We're in process of sorting that out at the moment, called Bringing Down the Light. But obviously we'll get to that at some point, hopefully next month or so. But yes, all good, David. We're just sort of, it's just pretty much non-stop. I mean, when I packed in work, I've been able to devote, it's not 7 hours a day, it's absolutely full on. I'm a light sleeper, and I'm usually up about 4 or 5 o'clock, and I'll sit there and I'll pick up emails and sort of reply to people, because half the time there's that much information coming in, I'm neglecting not just good accounts, but people who've been good enough to write in and give me information.
Sure, yeah.
I'm sort of mindful of that, because I look through emails and sometimes I think to myself, God, I've not replied to these people.
Yeah.
And I like to do that if I can. But it's brilliant. I'm really enjoying it. I wish, obviously, I could never have made a living at this. This is not something you make a lot of money at, people. So it had to wait till I were in such a position that I could devote this kind of time to it. Yeah. And
I mean, most of us in this business, I mean, especially you don't do it. You don't do it for the money anyway, do you? It's because it's in you, and it's your own interest, isn't it?
Oh yeah, there's. If I did it for money, I'd be out of pocket. There's no, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But I do it because it's a passion. I find it. It's quite a thrill, to be honest with you. Speaking to these people, getting to locations where they've seen these things, you know, and yeah, that's what it's all about. And I'm no different to the rest of us in that respect, I don't think.
Well, it's like you said. I mean, you've invested in all your equipment. Often you have to travel to go to places to investigate it, so it all costs money. So like you say, you normally end up spending money in order to sort of investigate it in the first place. So the likelihood of getting that money back is pretty unlikely, really.
Well, it is. Well, I spent over £2,000 on a thermal camera.
And you lost a lot of equipment as well, didn't you? A couple of years back.
That were a clever move, and I had a nice GoPro, not £2,000, but it were a nice one, and put it on a monopod and decided to walk through these woods, with monopod back at rucksack, and when I just felt round for camera and monopod, I've got the monopod, but camera had gone off. My own stupid fault. You should have heard me cursing.
I'm sure, honestly.
Yeah. but that's life. I won't do that one again.
I mean, was it insured? Did you get anything back for it?
No, I just let it go. That was end of it.
Yeah. Nice find for somebody anyway.
Oh, they'll have found it, yeah, without a doubt, because I literally did search for hours for it, and then every day, because it was during peak time of these animal mutilations, so I would up on those fields in between 4:30 and 5:30 every morning, or at least 5 days a week, because I wanted to find these poor, unfortunate animals as close to its source, as when it was, whatever had been done to them as possible. And that's why when you find it annoying when you get the other experts that will sit there saying, oh, it's people doing this, and I'm thinking, I'm going on these fields when it's dark. Yeah. I'm finding roe deer, probably the fastest animal in the United Kingdom, and I'm finding them with their ears and eyes removed on a field or in a wood.
And are they pretty bloodless as well, aren't they, Paul?
Oh, yeah, I mean, I think the first roe deer that I found, it looked like it had been exploded from inside out. It's very macabre, but there weren't any blood. I went all the way through it, holding it by the antlers and all the way through its fur, looking for puncture wounds, bite marks. There was nothing. But its side had got a great hole in it, and the only thing missing was half of its liver. And, we got pictures of that. I think that's in Truth Proof 3. I put them in black and white because I realised they're a bit macabre as well. So, it's hard to say what we're doing it. I mean, like I just touched on there, David. I mean, we're looking at the probably fastest thing in the United Kingdom. So unless you take a gun to it and shoot it, or use fast dogs to bring it down, and there were no signs of any bites on it, what is or was responsible for the deaths of those animals during? I mean, I found out about it in 2017, but it had been happening in 2016, and it stopped early 2018. And the reason it stopped, what livestock have been removed from fields and have never been introduced since. They've just lost too many. Yeah. And people have said, oh, what police involved? Well, yeah, they were. They hadn't a clue what we're doing it. And they'd sat there with the night scopes and hoping to sort of strike lucky and find out. Everybody seems to know what it is, but nobody knows. Yeah.
Did they ever do any forensic investigations on them?
If the police did, I never found out. And I couldn't get vets interested. And, when I went to vets and I showed them the photographs of what I was finding of the marine mammals, the porpoise with the big holes through the jaws, and the facial strips on these animals, it was difficult to get people to express an opinion,
Strange, Yeah. I mean, it does sound like, obviously we've heard about all the cattle mutilations in the States and elsewhere. They seem to have been done with lasers and things like that, don't they? Did you get that impression?
Well, yeah, I mean, the ears, unless you were removing those ears with a scalpel, they were just really clean cuts, and the the skin around the face just stripped. Yeah. And I realise it's a macabre thing to talk about, David, so I don't know whether you want to carry on, but one day I went with Les Drake Digital Creations to do some drone work, and it were afternoon, so I didn't go in the morning specifically because I was going to be there again in afternoon with Les. And we found one and the head and the neck. If people look at a sheep, the wool usually stops behind the ears, and the rest of it's sort of closely cropped, sort of skin and fur, but not very thick. Well, the head and the neck had been removed right down to the breastbone, so if you could picture a paint roller, what a decorator would use, you could actually pull that up to where the back of its head had been and just look down, and it had all been removed, and there was nothing eaten. I mean, none of it resembled the work of a predator. Not a predator that I would know. But once again, David, I'm not one of these people who's going to put my hand up. I know there's researchers who'll say it's the work of our ET friends. Yeah. Well, I'm sorry, but if I don't see that...
Exactly, if you don't see it, you can't say that, can you?
I can't say that. And if I'd got a witness who I trusted who said, look, there were these weird lights, and I could see these lights over my flock of sheep or whatever, and then I saw this happen, then you've got something to work on. But I'm not going to create a story where there isn't one. All I'm doing is reporting on what I was finding.
That's it. Yeah, you can just report on what the strange finding is. Yeah. You had you had reports of a cat, a wild cat as well, did you? That way. Was that included in your I think I've seen one of your books in every book. Yeah.
All three books. There's reports of black cats and beige ones.
Are they still being seen up that way?
Yeah, probably a month ago. The social media page, I think it was for Slamborough, I don't know what particular site it was called, not off the top of my head, but a guy said, words to the effect, my friend David Hind copied and pasted it and sent it me. It said, I've just left the RSPB reserve at Bempton after looking at the seabirds. It's just getting dark, and I know what I've seen. I'm not going mad, and a black panther's just ran across the road in front of me. And that's probably just a month ago. Me and Bob Brown have been lucky enough to see it. We saw it on Bempton Lane in, I think it was late 2017, and literally 15 seconds sooner, or 10 even, I'd have ran it over. It literally just entered the edge. We saw it, the length of it, and we saw it enter with the long black tail, and it were off into some fields. So they're there. I mean, and I've got a friend in Scarborough who gets himself onto a lot of farms. He works well, I'm saying a lot of farms. A lot of the places in North Yorkshire are little villages and farmhouses and farmland. And he does internet connections and phone lines. So he gets talking to a lot of these people, and he's been told on good authority that up around Dalby and Harwood Dale that there's 4 breeding pairs of black cats. And bearing in mind, David, that for anybody who's not familiar with this area, the North Yorkshire Moors National Park is over 500 square miles.
It is, yeah.
You know, so for anybody that's saying, oh no, there won't be 4 pairs, we're not looking at something 10-mile radius. We're looking at a potential area of over, I think it's 524 or something like that square miles, extending onto the coast. And it's uncanny because a lot of these cat reports are seen along the coast as well, you know, up at Ravenscar and Whitby, down to Danesdyke. I mean, there's a guy who lives in Danesdyke. He's lived in there for 13 years. Quite happy living his own existence. Danesdyke's a area of woodland, listeners, and he's lived there 13 years. And I spoke to him regular, taking food from time to time, and he's seen the cat on a few occasions when he's come out of his tent early in the morning. You know.
Wow.
Quite something to live in. I mean, you're saying to me, David, well, you've got feet on ground and you'll go to Rendlesham and come home to your bed and I'll sleep in forest, but this guy's something else when you think about it, innit? You know, can you imagine?
Yeah, with one of those walking about, or even a family of them, yeah, I wouldn't fancy it, I don't think. Cause
I'm just thinking about what you must be made of to live somewhere like that for 13 years.
Yeah, it's strange that they can just sort of disappear. That's what I don't quite get. You know, it's a bit like the abominable snowman, isn't it? You know.
Yeah, I find it really odd myself because there's a lane in between Bridlington and Bempton called Short Lane. I've never really sort of drove along it in car to see how long it is, but it can't be more than a mile long, and you've just got sort of arable land either side of it and low hedgerows, and it's not like a long hedgerow, just odd hawthorn trees and little clusters. Yet over the years in archive, when I was looking in the archive at Bridlington Library, and the reports of black cats were on Short Lane, and you're thinking, there's nothing there. Do you know, there's nothing but open fields. Because
you'd think cats would live in a cave or something like that, wouldn't you? You know.
Well, there's plenty of caves along Flamborough and Bempton where something like that could hide, and they are seen along the cliff tops. I mean, there are an elderly couple parked up again the lighthouse. I think it was last year. They contacted Bob Brown. He works in a charity shop, and they came in quite by chance, and they were telling Bob they'd seen this cat, and then from that Bob gave them my number, and I've spoken to them, and they were just sat having probably a sandwich and a flask of coffee and looking onto the cliff tops, and there's a field with gorse in it, and, you know, gorse bushes and sheep grazing. Says, and suddenly a large black cat left the gorse area and ran along the field edge. You know, there's too many people reporting them. So once again, when I'm quite confident in my own skin to say that, yeah, I think they're real. I think they're out there. So to all these people that say what a load of rubbish, just keep saying it. I'm not really bothered.
Oh, yeah.
You know. Yeah.
And obviously, if we're talking about wild cats, that sort of takes us out of the paranormal era, doesn't it? It's unless, of course, they're coming through, I don't know, a different dimension or something. You know.
Yeah, I was just saying, does it, David? I'm not saying that they're not here and breeding, because that's in all probability they are.
Like, you know, you don't know, do you?
But then you get the reports of the cryptid werewolf type creatures. Yeah. Like I said earlier when we first started this conversation, something I really weren't interested in, and I thought it's all things of movies. But where we're doing the Dark Forest project, I'm talking to a former gamekeeper who's absolutely 100%. We've got 3 guys who went into a similar area at Forest to do some wild camping and fishing. They're telling the same story. They live 100 mile apart. There's 20 years in between, 18 years in between sightings. We've got mountain bikers in the same area seeing similar things. We've got a paratrooper on cliff tops at Bempton with his friend on February 7th, I think it was, 2019. They wanted to see falcons in early morning flight and do a bit of camping and what have you, and they went real early and walked along cliff tops early hours of morning, way before light, way before the falcons, and claimed they've seen this thing that's absolutely terrified them, being hideous. I mean, in this guy's own words, he says, I've done bogside in Belfast, I've been to Iraq. He says, so I know what fear is. He says, but this one on another level. What's he got to gain? He doesn't mind me using his name, and he's allowed me to record him. What's he got to gain from telling a story like that? And then we've got that story, and then during the lockdown, or obviously legally, me and Bob, we visited a farm and walked across the fields and set cameras up. We didn't go to RSPB because we wanted to avoid people. And a guy come walking across with his dog. Who lived in Reeton. I realise these locations won't mean a lot to your listeners, but it's probably 3 or 4 miles away from where we were.
They can always look it up on the map before we look at his.
That's correct. Yeah, that's why I threw the names in. And he'd pulled up in his Land Rover and took his dog for a walk, and we didn't tell him anything about unexplained phenomena. He was talking to us. He thought we were looking at seabirds, and off he went to Flamborough, or towards Flamborough, but we were still there. An hour later, or maybe an hour and a half, I don't know, when he walked back. And it's getting dark, so he obviously knows we're not looking at seabirds. So he just stopped, briefly exchanged, what you're looking at, lads? Have you seen the sea eagle? Because there'd been one seen. And I told him, I said, look, we're looking for these unexplained lights over at sea. And to his credit, he said he'd lived there in Reeton 30-odd years and never seen anything. And I think he said he'd got windows that looked out onto the sea. But he weren't condescending or sarcastic. He was just being honest.
Yeah. I mean, he probably wasn't sitting out there looking for them, probably. Like you spend a lot more hours probably than he does.
Well, I'm lucky, just to jump from this story for a moment, that now the rock anglers have started fishing. At the end of October, they're allowed to fish the cliff tops. Before that, they're not because of the seabird colony. Right. But if anything's seen tonight, I don't mean, they'll just get on hotline to Paul Sinclair, but a lot of them know me and I'll get a phone call. So then you can be up there as and when this is happening, because they might, if the tide's coming in at, say, 10 o'clock tonight, they'll fish it till it comes in and then fish it for an hour or so on way out. So they'll be up there 4 or 5 hours. They might be up there till 3 in the morning, depending on tide or, So there's a good chance. But jumping back to this guy, he was just about to go. He'd got this dog with him, this pointer dog. And just as he's going, Bob said, have you seen any unusual animals? And he says, well, what do you mean? So Bob asked him if he'd seen the black cat that had been reported, the panther-type cat. And he told his dog to sit down. He says, well, I haven't. He says, but I didn't expect to have 2 blokes in front of me asking me this kind of question, so I'm going to tell you something. And I think he said he was 60 years old, this guy. Not that that's any bearing, but one saying he's not a teenager.
That's right.
He said last year on the full moon, he said it was a full moon, and that's not had any correlation to when other guys have seen these things. I need to stress people, but he could date it because it was the November full moon last year. So I went back and had a little look at that, and it was November the 12th. He said, I parked at Reeton Sands and I walked along the beach. And it's a lovely night, lovely clear night. He says, and he was explaining how clever his dog was. He said, this dog, if it sees a rabbit, it stands different. If it sees a pheasant, it stands slightly different. He said, I can read the dog and know what he's seen. He said, and he's looking up the cliffs, from Reeton to Speeton, and they're not very steep. They start to get really steep and go to 420 and vertical as further on, but he's not at that point. He says, and I'm thinking, what are you looking at, dog? He says, and then I saw it. He said, and it were on all fours at first. He said, and then it stood on two legs. He said, and I could see it. He said, and have you ever seen the werewolf from Harry Potter? Well, we had. Shall I tell you why we have? Because it's a description that a lot of people have give for this thing. He said, that's what it looked like.
Really? Yeah.
He said, it turned and looked at me in the moonlight and then ran off. Now, I realise there's going to be people listening to this thinking, he's off his head. he's crazy. You know, he's crazy. But once again, I'll stick with what I'm saying. Independent witnesses, unrelated to each other.
That's it. Goes a long way.
Singing from the same hymn sheet. We know, listeners, this is anecdotal evidence. I haven't got moving footage of this thing. But, you know, just cut us a bit of slack. We're getting out there. We're actually interviewing and talking to these people who are making these claims, and it's not easy getting them to talk a lot at times. No. This guy hasn't gone on film. I mean, he literally told us that story, and I'm so pleased that Bob Brown was with me. Otherwise, David, it had just been me relaying a story. And once again, you always find you're trying to prove yourself. There'd have been somebody sat there going, he's just a good storyteller, that bloke, you know? And but Bob were there, so Bob heard it in first-hand account, same as me. I'm going to try and trace him, actually, and just see how far we could get with it, see if we can get him to, even if he just lets me record him or blacked out. I have an idea that I'd be able to find this guy, to be honest with you, because it's Reeton, and it's not a big place, and I've good description of who he is. Yeah. So, yeah, I think I could find him.
Yeah, I mean, knowing you as I do, I mean, I know you don't talk BS, you know, and it's like you tend to find out, you tend to get to know who's the BSers, don't you, in this business after a while.
Oh, God.
And I know you're not one of them.
Well, you know, I try not to be, and if I got it wrong, I tell you now, David, if I got it, I'd hold my hand up and say, look, you know, it's the same when I wrote Night People, David.
Yeah, we're going to get into that. That's your latest book.
Yeah, well, obviously, for anybody that didn't know, that's about my own experiences from childhood to present day. But I did think when I wrote it, I thought, well, I'm going to have some kind of revelations here, and I'm going to remember more. And, you know, because I'm bound to do, because I'm putting all this energy searching my mind for these stories on these accounts that I've remembered from childhood. I'm bound to remember more, but I only remembered two things more in all the book. And one of them were insignificant, and I were on Church Street as a little boy, walking with my mum, and I were kicking leaves along Church Street, sycamore leaves, piles and piles of them, and all it did was tell me it were autumn. I never knew what season it was when that actually happened. And another one when we moved here to this house where I live now, which I've lived in this spot 30 years now, you know. I've converted it to 3 flats, and that's why I were able to travel places during COVID with Bob Brown, because he lives in top flat.
Right. Oh, I did know that.
Yeah, so there you go. And Night People, I did sort of debate right up to last. I even spoke to Whitley Strieber about whether I should publish it, you know, because I just weren't sure, because it is personal, you know, the stuff. But I'm bound to get some flack for it. I'm bound to get people saying what a load of rubbish. But for the most part, I'm pleased that I did now. Yeah. You know,
well, I've got a copy of it. I think it's a very interesting book. I haven't actually read it properly yet. I've flipped through it. Unfortunately, I've packed mine away because I'm moving soon, and we've been waiting for a moving date, and it's packed away in boxes. We're sitting amongst boxes at the moment, so it's packed away somewhere. But I will get around to reading it at some point.
Well, stressful time moving, David, isn't it?
Oh,
you know,
God,
and,
yeah. Well, we thought we were going to move about 3 weeks ago. We were still waiting for a date, and then we found out our buyer solicitor's been hanging around, you know. But the people we bought, yeah, that's a long story, but nothing to bother about our listeners.
Fingers crossed it'll be sorted soon, won't
you? I'll be talking from a new studio in a couple of weeks, hopefully. So.
But, very good. All good.
But apart from that, yeah, your new book is Night People, and it's like you say, it's about your. What were you thinking of doing a Truth Proof 4? Or?
Well, I'm on with. I've got enough material for another 2, and one's going to be solely about cryptids. I mean, I could, and I ain't got a title for it or anything at the moment. but I've too many good accounts and people telling me this stuff, and the work that we're doing with digital creations is interesting in itself. So there's one going to be about cryptids, and there's another one. Whether we call it Truth Proof 4, I don't know. But it'll be on similar lines. However, it'll be branching out. The other three were primarily East and North Yorkshire. But there's that many people contacted me, David, with absolutely first-class information, UFO related, and just basically unusual stories that you can't just neglect them stories because they don't fit into the location where you live. So yeah, it'll be moving out from that area, and I'm looking forward to it. I have a great folder on computer and on an hard drive, and there's enough. There's already enough for another book, without a doubt, and so yeah, it'll be happening, but I don't know the exact time because I seem to be throwing everything at the Dark Forest at the moment. I mean, on Wednesday, COVID permitting, I shall be going to interview 2 people who claim to have seen the same thing, totally unrelated to one another, the other guys, and they saw it, I think, in 2017. So it's interesting. I'm quite looking forward to that.
Unfortunately, because of the lockdowns and things, we actually missed seeing each other this year. Awakening, unfortunately, that was cancelled, because you were going to be doing a talk there, wasn't you, in Manchester?
That's correct, yeah. Which is
a great shame.
Do you know, conferences, this is a great conference. I enjoyed it. I've been fortunate enough to go twice and had a little bit of a talk at it the last time I went with Chris, but they don't really do that much for me, do conferences. I really do like talking to witnesses and just getting out there in the field. I was invited to Barcelona, and I might have got even name wrong. I think it was UFO Congress as a main speaker last year, and then with COVID, I turned it down actually, listeners, but with COVID, I think that they did it virtual, but I've just been invited again.
Excellent.
For 2021, I turned it down again.
Well, don't you go out and get a bit of sunshine then?
Well, I know that. I've been asked to do loads and loads of conferences, and I'm just happy doing what I do. Yeah. Do you know what I'm saying? And I'm not saying I'll not do conferences, but what I find is that I'll want to get a talk together, and I want it as good as I can. And if I can't do that, that's something else that chips into my time.
Yeah. I know a couple of times when I've spoken to you before, you said, I'm not going to do it again, and then next time you're out there and you're doing it again.
Yeah, I know, so that's me, full of it, aren't I? But they're good things. I mean, I went to Rendlesham, I think that time that you went, and listened to Colonel Holt, and then he came through to Chris Evers' Outer Limits conference, and I've done conference for Chris 3 times, I think. I know it's 2 or 3 times. And they've been okay. I think we had a few sound issues with last one we did. But no complaints, and you meet some great people.
Yeah. I was hoping to get struck back again this year, but unfortunately, this year had a different idea, didn't it? So maybe next year I might try. Trouble is, he's sort of, he always 80 this year, so I think he's about 81 now, so next year he's going to be sort of 81, 82-ish, so whether he'll be willing to fly and all that, I don't know, but we'll have to see how it goes.
Well, fair crack to the guy, I found him, I thought he was really humble and...
Yeah, he is, there's no ego with him at all.
No, I did enjoy his company, I thought he was a nice fella. But there you go. I mean, there's some massive egos, and not just in this subject. It's everywhere, isn't it? Sure. But we just do what we do, and there's some great people out there. There's some great people involved in subject. There's people researching just as good as what I'm doing who aren't interested in writing books, and and fair crack to them. There's people come up onto them cliff tops with me, and they'll sleep the night in their car. I might go up for 3 or 4 hours because I don't want to let them down. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And they'll stay night in their car.
Well, I take my hat off to them. When I wear a hat, that is, well, it's not very often, but...
You wear a hat, David, yeah. So, did you want to touch on anything else, David?
No, not really. I mean, if you'd covered I really wanted to give your book a good covering. We're going to talk at the Outer Limits conference hopefully next year. Are you still?
Well,
Chris has
asked me to.
Because that was postponed from this year, unfortunately.
Yeah, Chris has asked me to, and if I do, I probably will talk about. If I commit myself to that, I'll talk about the Night People and talk about these personal experiences, because I know from feedback that I'm getting from people who've read the book has helped a few people, because they can relate to some things in it, because I've never really had a good experience from my interaction with what I called the Night People. It's only because I saw them in the night. I mean, you could call them what you want, really. But the typical grey type aliens and tall ones that look like grey aliens. Want of a better word, as a little boy, I didn't really know what I was looking at.
And I mean, they're very similar stories to I've heard from people like the Kinsellas, Philip and Ronald. They tell a very similar story. It seems to happen with children, doesn't it? Or certain children. It does.
And I wonder if the only difference with such as Ronnie and Philip and myself, I don't know whether we're fortunate or unfortunate, but we can remember. We actually remember fragments of what happened. I mean, some people have got a full timeline of events, but I've just got these little bits, little fragments of information in between stories, waking up in the night, seeing the lights on the wall in the bedroom and sweeping round almost like a car in a cul-de-sac, and you see its lights go round in your bedroom, but obviously no cul-de-sac at the back of us. And then seeing the silhouette of the being. And then but you're that absorbed in moment, you're a rabbit in headlights, but I know I've just said headlights, and you can't escape it. And you watch the lights. I don't know whether the lights are some kind of, I don't know. I don't know whether the lights are there to throw you into confusion, to focus your mind on something else. I really don't know. But then they're around you. Then they're stood looking at you. And you can't move. And they're talking to you in your head. And it's not words, it's not a conversation like what me and you are having, David. But you can hear audible words coming into your head. In that instance, that night, they were telling me that a bed spring was turning in my back.
Wow, yeah.
How crazy. And the pain in my back was just excruciating. It felt like somebody had just slipped a steel tube or steel bar, quarter of an inch bar deep into my back. And the next morning, I've got 3 holes in my back.
Yeah. Wow.
And I forgot all about it when I woke up. It was only when I sat on edge of bed, and Mary, my wife, said, "Paul, I don't believe it, you've got 3 holes in your back," and then a bit of it comes back. And I often wonder, David, obviously, because they were painless when I woke up, and there were no blood, and I often wonder if I'd have said I'd been a single man, you'd have probably seen the holes at some point, but do them memories dissipate unless you can just catch them straight away, them?
Yeah, sure, I understand exactly what you mean, yeah.
Because, as soon as Mary said it, I saw the light sweeping round in the bedroom. I saw the outline of them. And then, slowly, throughout the day, more and more fragments of it started to come back to me. I don't have a full timeline. I wonder if I were in bed, because it was a procedure that took place on my back. So you think, were you actually in bed? And how could Mary have slept through that?
Yeah.
It's just crazy situation. So the Night People is I wouldn't say full of stories exactly like that, but just, stories about these beings and childhood to present day.
Yeah, it's very similar to stories I've heard from other people, as I said. It's fascinating. It really is. I mean, I tell you what. Night People is available on Amazon, and anyone's interested out there.
It's available on Amazon, and for anybody that don't want to use Amazon, I think it's on. Well, I know it's on my website, which is a pretty poor excuse because I'm not very good at that, people. It's truthproof.webs.com, and the books are available there. Or give me a call, and I can get booked to you.
Do you want to give your number out or your email address or something?
The email address is Paul Sinclair, them 3 letters, ILF@gmail.com. And if you want to call me, it's 07949 455 941. if you want to text beforehand so I know what it's about, feel free. But
obviously, if it's from the US, it'll have to be +44. You take the first 0 off and +44.
Excellent, yeah. And obviously, what I do, I just sent a book recently to Scott Santa, and I said to Scott, send me your address, and I went to the post office and just got a price on postage for him. I'm not a greedy person. You know what I mean? I'm not after making thousands of pounds out of people, out of the subject. I'm in it because I've got a genuine desire to find out what's happening. Not just for myself, but for other people as well, and that's what drives me.
I know that, Paul. That's, Anyway, Paul, it's been fantastic talking to you again, and as I say, I was looking forward to seeing you this year, but unfortunately, this year I had different ideas, so hopefully I'll be seeing you next year.
I'm sure of it.
Either at Awakening or the Outer Limits Conference, or even something else. We don't know. But anyway, Paul, as I say, thank you very much for coming on and talking to me, sparing time. I know you're a very busy man. You have a very busy family, private life as well. I understand. You know.
Oh God, and grandkids. But there you go. But no, David, thank you. I've enjoyed that.
Good. Okay, thank you, Paul. And everyone out there, thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed that with Paul Sinclair, an amazing man and a good friend. And I have a lot of respect for him, and he knows that, I think. And as I say, I like him a lot. But anyway, thanks for listening. And you've been listening to Paranormal Dimensions. I'm David Young on the Paranormal UK Radio Network. Thanks very much for listening. Bye-bye.
Paranormal Dimensions is as bright and powerful as our celestial star, the sun. And although it's expending thousands of pounds of energy every minute of the day, have no fear. There's plenty left.
Paranormal Dimensions is a regular feature on Mondays on the Paranormal UK Radio Network.